The government moves to cut down the country's energy dependence.
ZNS on the scene of the country's latest homicide.
And highlights from women's basketball in the Bahamas tonight. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
The government moves to cut down the country's dependence on fossil fuels and become more energy sufficient. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kendino Knowles.
And I'm Charisma Robinson. If the Electricity Amendment Bill is passed in the House of Assembly, people using renewable energy will tie into the grid and be regulated.
Janelle Ferguson was in the House of Assembly as debate kicked off.
Parliamentarians are hopeful that the enactment of the Electricity Amendment Bill, currently being debated in the House of Assembly, will have a long-term impact on energy production in the country. MP for East Grand Bahama, Peter Turnquest, believes energy producers should fall under an independent regulator. He is, however, anticipating the impact a bill like this one can have on Grand Bahama.
I trust that this amendment and the policies to accompany it will extend to Freeport and the entire island of Grand Bahama so that residents will be able to legally take advantage of alternative sources of energy. We must do all that we can to lower the cost of energy so that Grand Bahamians can regain their quality of life and aid in the recovery of a desperate economy.
However, Minister of Grand Bahama Michael Darvo believes that Grand Bahama residents will not be included in the new bill because of what is prescribed in the Hawksbill Creek Agreement. He urged the principals of the Grand Bahama Port Authority to seriously consider renewable energy sources.
That these companies, if they are allowed to use alternative forms of energy, to have a mechanism in place for some form of self-generation and to be able to tie into the grid, this will help our environment because we will definitely be burning cleaner fuels, and we will also be able to reduce the cost of electricity, thus attracting more direct foreign investment in light manufacturing, logistics, and heavy industry in the industrial sector of Grand Bahama.
Meanwhile, during Wednesday's debate, Minister of Education Jerome Fitzgerald explained how the tie-in grid connection system will work for consumers.
That once you produce electricity, you will not get money in return for the production, but there will be a meter which will read the amount of electricity you're putting onto the grid. That amount of electricity that you produce will be given a value. That value will be deducted from your electricity bill.
Also contributing to the bill were MP for Fox Hill Fred Mitchell, Central Grand Bahama MP Nico Grant, and North Eleuthera MP Theo Neely. Janelle Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Minister of Foreign Affairs Fred Mitchell also addressing criticisms on the government's recent mission to China that yielded a number of positive international agreements for the country. Minister Mitchell says the country has to be grateful about, or careful that is, about references being made to Chinese investment in the Bahamas.
It is a fact that the two largest investments in this country, which came from China, were approved by the previous administration. It should hardly seem appropriate then for complaints to come from that quarter about Chinese investments. One was a $1 billion investment by the Hutchison Whampoa Group of Hong Kong. The other was the China Export-Import Bank's investment at Bahama of almost $3 billion. The Bahamas operates within a global context. There is no evidence to suggest that there is Chinese state political hegemony or designs for such hegemony over the Bahamas. All the evidence suggests purely commercial terms. If there is evidence to suggest otherwise, the public, including our friends opposite, are invited to indicate otherwise.
Well, since the rollout of the new immigration policy, government has received criticism from a select number of people who Minister of Foreign Affairs Fred Mitchell says sought to discredit the work of the Immigration Department. The minister said the law remains the same, but noted the government has committed to improve the condition at the Carmichael Road Detention Center. Minister Mitchell also addressed a noted Queen's Counsel who he says had made allegations against the government that cannot go unchecked.
This human rights advocate felt no compunction in slandering the men and women of the Department of Immigration without cause and refuses to apologize for the slander. Yesterday, in the press, he said that all migrants should all sue the Bahamas government for abuse. He claimed that there are 2,000 hungry lawyers in the Bahamas. He claimed further that if all the suits were brought, that this would bankrupt the Bahamas government, and he invited them to do so. This is coming from a Bahamian citizen and an officer of the court. In law, then, it would seem that the matter is being activated not out of genuine concern for migrants, but rather actuated by malice aforethought.
Minister of Education Jerome Fitzgerald said attention must be placed on senior citizens in the country to ensure they have proper health care, electricity, and are able to live within their means. The minister noted that too often Bahamians do not get the medical care they need because they cannot afford it. He hopes plans outlined by government will assist those in their golden years.
And medical bills is another factor, Mr. Speaker, that have bankrupt families in this country, Mr. Speaker. Because no one wants to, and nobody who loves a family member, Mr. Speaker, will sit by and not do everything they possibly can to ensure that that member is able to live as long as they can or get the help and medical treatment they need. I would wish for us to really look closely at what we can do for our seniors and see how we can protect them so after they've given their life of service, given a life of contribution to our country, that they have adequate medical care, that the cost of living from an electricity standpoint is reduced, and any other taxes that the government comes to bear on them, we find a way to keep it within their means.
Member for East Grand Bahama and Deputy Leader of the Free National Movement, Peter Turnquest, raised a number of questions on the future of the Bank of the Bahamas that transferred $100 million of bad debt to Resolve Bahamas.
Mr. Turnquest said the move has left more questions than answers.
The Board of Directors of Bank of the Bahamas failed in their duty to protect the assets of the depositors and the shareholders of Bank of the Bahamas, exposing the people of the Bahamas to a $100 million contingent risk, and thus are not in a position to restructure that entity. Will the contingent liability assumed by the government of the Bahamas have any effect, possible effect, on the country's sovereign rating?
Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie promised to address all issues related to the Bank of the Bahamas during his contribution. Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell, though, questions the motives of Turnquest's questions, noting that what the government did was a better option than allowing the bank to go belly up. Meanwhile, Minister of State for Finance Michael Alquita said the credit agency Moody's agreed with the government's decision.
The government will incur only modest financial costs over the 10-year Bank of the Bahamas bailout, an international rating agency, praising its swift action to prevent any wider impact on the commercial banking system. Moody's, in an assessment that effectively backed the government's decision to rescue the ailing institution and its method of doing so, agreed with the Christie administration's position that it had not added to the growing national debt. In what amounted to a quiet, understated endorsement of the government position, Moody's said the rescue would have no net impact on the government of the Bahamas' sovereign credit rating.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.